sincere condolences to the families and loved ones who are grieving. We all stand with you.
Yesterday was a tragedy that shocked not only Canada, but the world. Before we go any further, I want to extend once again my most sincere condolences to the families of the victims and their loved ones. I, and we are, all standing with you. Since last addressing Canadians, there have been ongoing discussions. Since I last addressed Canadians, there have been ongoing discussions with foreign ministers who have been unintentional. This new information reinforces the need for a thorough investigation into this matter. Canada is working with its allies to ensure that a thorough and credible investigation is conducted to determine the causes of this fatal crash. As I said yesterday, Canadians have questions and they deserve answers. Permettez-moi de répéter ce que je viens d'annoncer.
Allow me to repeat what I just said in French. We have intelligence from various sources, notably from our own intelligence services and those of our allies. This information indicates that the plane was brought down by a surface-to-air missile from Iran. It is possible that this was inadvertent. This news confirms the need to have an in-depth investigation into this affair. As I said yesterday, Canadians have questions, and they deserve answers. Canada is working with its allies to ensure that an in-depth investigation is conducted so that we can uncover the causes of this tragic crash.
Foreign Minister François-Philippe Champagne spoke with Iranian Foreign Minister Zarif. Minister Champagne made it clear that Canadian officials must immediately be granted access to Iran in order to provide consular services, identify the victims, and participate in a thorough investigation. He also condemned Iranian strikes that targeted military bases in Iraq where coalition forces, including Canadians, are currently stationed. Minister Zarif committed to continuing this dialogue with Canada as we seek answers. I spoke with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky earlier today and conveyed my condolences to the many Ukrainians who perished in this tragedy. He assured me that Ukraine is taking all necessary measures to ensure a thorough investigation, and we will work closely with Ukraine and our partners throughout this process. I also called Prime Minister Mark Rutte of the Netherlands. He shared with me his experience in handling the aftermath and investigation into Malaysian Airlines Flight 17. Je me suis également entretenu avec le président Macron.
I also spoke to President Macron once again today, who offered his assistance as we move through this very difficult time. I'm also in contact with a number of other international leaders, and those discussions are ongoing. We will continue to work closely with our partners in the coming days and months.
It is now more important than ever that we know exactly how such a tragedy could have happened. The families of the victims and all Canadians want answers. I want answers. That means closure, transparency, accountability, and justice. And this government will not rest until we get that. Thank you for being here this morning. I'll now take your questions.
So first question, Hélène Bouzetti, and then we'll go to Glenn McGregor, CTV.
Good afternoon, Mr. Trudeau. You said that you asked to be able to participate in the investigation. I'd like to know what response Iran gave you. Are they accepting to have Canada participate? We are working with Ukrainian investigators at this time, and we are continuing to ask to have Canadians involved in this process. And we will continue to have that conversation. That tells me that this is not yet confirmed. Correct. given the context, do you feel that the U.S. is partly responsible for this, given that they created the situation in which the missiles were launched? I think that's one of the many questions that people will be thinking about and trying to find answers to. For the moment, I just want to underline the importance of having a full and credible investigation so that we can get those facts and then we can continue to analyze based on those facts.
I think it underscores how important it is that we have a thorough, credible investigation to allow us to then draw conclusions and reflections once we have assessed and established the facts of what happened.
Prime Minister, could you describe in some more detail the kind of information you have that indicates that this was a surface-to-air strike? Because this is, as you know, an extremely serious allegation, and Canadians are going to want to see proof that this is what had happened.
The intelligence and evidence suggests that it is likely that it was a surface-to-air strike, but I will not go into the details of that intelligence at this time.
Given that the Iranians have denied this, and there's reports they're bulldozing the crash site, they've claimed the flight and voice and data recorders have been damaged. Do you trust them that they haven't actually already compromised the investigation at this point? Do you think it's a possibility that we won't get a real answer here?
We have highlighted that it is extremely important that there be a thorough and credible investigation on site of the crash with international partners. The Iranians have indicated that they understand that, but the conclusions we have been able to draw on the preliminary conclusions we've been able to draw based on intelligence and evidence today are clear enough for me to share them with Canadians right now.
So next up, Catherine Levesque, Presse Canadienne.
La presse canadienne. Bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau.
Good afternoon, Mr. Trudeau. Can you tell us now whether Iran has agreed to share the black boxes with Canada or France, and what would be the next steps? For the moment, Iran has said that they will be keeping the black boxes in Iran. But they told Ukrainian President Zelensky that Ukrainian investigators at least would have access to the black boxes.
The Iranian authorities have indicated that they wish to keep the black boxes in Iran, but have indicated to President Zelensky of Ukraine that Ukrainian investigators would have access to those black boxes.
Et comment pouvez-vous faire confiance?
And how can you trust Iran now when they're denying some of the information that you just shared with us? We recognize that this is a situation where we're going to need to get more clarity, more answers, and that's why we are calling for a complete and credible investigation with international partners so that we can uncover the facts of what happened for Canadians, for the families affected, and for people around the world.
Hi, Prime Minister. I just want to circle back to an earlier question. If the intelligence is accurate, then it seems this is the end result of a sequence of events that was sparked by the drone strike ordered by the U.S. president. So given the information you have, how much responsibility does the United States bear for this tragedy?
The evidence suggests that this is the likely cause, but we need to have a full and complete and credible investigation to establish exactly what happened. That is what we are calling for, and that is what we are expecting will happen.
If Iran does not cooperate, and there are some reports of at least minimal cooperation or questionable cooperation to this point, what pressure can you bring to bear? Would you argue for sanctions? Would economic repercussions? What can Canada do to pressure Iran to give you the investigation you want?
I think those are conversations and steps we will contemplate as things move forward if it doesn't appear that there is a credible, complete investigation. But right now we continue to work with partners and direct Iran with our requests that we have a credible and complete investigation.
Okay, going to go to Marie Vastel next, and then afterwards David Aiken.
Oh, OK. Je pensais pas avoir une question. Allô?
Yeah, so to come back to the question of Iran, if you're concluding that this is due to a missile strike, what will your reaction be, and how do you intend to respond to Iran? Well, first of all, the conclusion that we drew was based on a preliminary analysis of the intelligence that we have. But it just underscores the importance of having a credible and complete investigation into exactly what happened. That's why we're going to proceed with that step before we draw any other conclusions. So I understand that, but would that not threaten diplomatic relations in terms of having access to the site, in terms of the repatriation of the victims? Would that not threaten our presence in Iraq if that's what's happening, if people are launching missiles at the bases? So will our instructions to our forces in Iraq remain the same, or will something change? I imagine something will happen. Well, indeed, this is a very concerning situation. That's why we want to know more. We're going to be working with international authorities and with investigators and with Iran in order to get answers into exactly what happened. We recognize that this may have been done accidentally, but that just makes it even more important to clarify exactly what happened.
Aiken, and then we'll go down to Christian Noel afterwards.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. I just want to come back to the qualifiers you've been using. May well have been unintentional. You just a minute ago said it may have been accidental. That implies that it may not have been unintentional. Can you be as definitive as you can be, knowing what you know, knowing what you can't share with us, about the intentionality of this apparent missile strike?
I think that is one of the reasons why it is so important to have a full and credible investigation. Before we get into definitive conclusions, as you say, we need to ensure that we have all the facts gathered. The intelligence and evidence right now suggests very clearly a possible and probable cause for the crash, but it is all the more necessary, therefore, to gather all the evidence to have a complete picture of what happened.
And let's follow through then that the evidence does in fact show that it was an accidental, unintentional surface-to-air missile. What range of options would the government of Canada respond in some way to that? And if so, what range of responses might your government consider?
I think anything in the range of responses would need to start from a clear understanding and a credible confirmation of what actually happened, and that is why a proper and full investigation is going to be so important.
Christian Noel, and then we'll go next to Michelle.
Bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau.
Good afternoon, Mr. Trudeau. Based on what you know now, are you convinced beyond all reasonable doubt that this was a missile and that it was unintentional? Well, to be convinced beyond all doubt, we would need a credible, thorough, and in-depth investigation. And that is exactly what we're calling for. We want a complete investigation. That's what we asked for yesterday, and we're continuing to ask for that today. And those discussions are ongoing. And I want to tell Canadians and families that what we have gathered in terms of intelligence does indicate very clearly that this could very well have been an unintentional surface-to-air missile strike. And for the families of the victims who want answers, if the investigation isn't done with the full cooperation of Iran, how can you reassure Canadians that you're really doing everything possible to get answers and to have a credible, transparent investigation? Well, we understand that investigations of this type do take time. We know that getting a really thorough investigation takes time. This is only the second day, and we're only drawing preliminary conclusions at this time. We do need more clarity for the Canadians and the families who are feeling despair and who are really suffering right now. So we will continue to insist on getting more information and more in-depth investigation.
Right.
Hi, Prime Minister. When you spoke with President Zelensky today, had he been briefed by any of his any allies on this intelligence that you've been receiving in the recent hours, or did you have to share this intelligence with him for the first time?
I shared with him some of the reasons we are so intent on having a full and complete investigation. We know that it is extremely important to establish clarity around the facts of what happened, and he assured me that Canada, as a good friend of Ukraine, will be closely involved with them in the investigation into this tragedy.
Okay, so I'll rephrase the question. Did President Zelensky know about this intelligence suggesting that the missile possibly had been used to hit the plane?
I believe there have been media reports about it through much of the day, but I don't know for sure whether he was briefed by intelligence officials or not.
Okay.
Just going to go to the back of the room.
So if I understand correctly, you're not ruling out the possibility that this was intentional. Is that correct? It's really too early to draw any clear conclusions or to rule out any other possibilities. Certainly, we know that we need a more in-depth and credible investigation that will be able to establish beyond any doubt what the causes of this tragic accident were. I know there have been some discussions with other counterparts. Have you tried to talk to your counterparts? I'm willing to talk to anyone in order to get answers in this tragedy.
Given the tensions in the area that were the cause of a drone strike by the United States, do you think that the United States is at least partially responsible for this tragedy?
I think it is too soon to be drawing conclusions or assigning blame or responsibility in whatever proportions. Right now, our focus is on supporting the families that are grieving right across the country and providing what answers we can in a preliminary way, but recognizing that there is going to need to be a full and credible investigation into what exactly happened before we draw any conclusions.
Earlier today, President Trump characterized, said he had concerns that a missile might have brought down the plane, and he said it's a very rough neighborhood. I was wondering what you thought of that characterization. How does it make you feel?
I'll let Mr. Trump's words stand for themselves.
I'm going to go back to Ryan, National Post.
Prime Minister, we don't have diplomatic relationships with Iran. The country is already heavily sanctioned by the international community. Are you worried in terms of trying to get good behavior like access to the site and participation in the investigation that Canada doesn't have any levers here, that we don't have any leverage to force Iran into better behavior?
We have consular officials who are en route to Ankara, Turkey at this moment, and the Iranian authorities have indicated that they would be open to issuing visas so that consular assistance can be given on the ground.
There are consular officials who are on their way to Turkey, and Iran has indicated that they would be open to issuing visas so that those people would be able to come to the site to support families.
Talked with the Iranian foreign minister. Was he open to allowing Canadians to be part of the investigation? Because their air transport authority says that we have been invited to be part of the investigation.
There has been openness to Canadian involvement in the investigation from the beginning, expressed by the Iranians, but Minister Champagne will be holding a press conference in a few hours where he can answer those questions in more detail.
Going to go to Maura Forrest.
Prime Minister, just on that same question, can you be a little more specific? How confident are you that Canadian officials will be involved in this investigation?
Canadian expertise when it comes to air tragedies, to expertise when it comes to crash investigation is world-class. We have much to contribute, and we have lost much in the loss of so many Canadian lives, so many families across this country grieving. We will be involved. We will offer all the expertise that we have to offer. We have already been engaged with the Ukrainians, who are part of the investigation team.